had to abruptly end my rambling about types of students, so today I'm going to finish what I started. The other type of student that I remember in school was the incredibly tech-oriented kid. This kid just seemed to have the latest version of whatever computer is out there, whatever phone is out there, whatever CD player is out there, you name it. This kid just had it. They knew how to try to upsell it to people. They made technology be their identity. But in some cases, I remember very vividly that there are people who had all these tech gadgets, and for some reason they didn't necessarily know all of their features. They didn't really know how to use them. I remember this one kid who years later he showed me that he had an iPad. That was the first time I ever saw an iPad, like for me to actually wield, not just looking at it from wandering in a mall and peeking at Apple, nothing like that. Like I actually physically held this. And then, I was using it, I was typing in it, doing all kinds of crazy things and screenshotting and things like that. And he's like, oh, I guess you have one of these. And I'm like, no, I've never held one of these before. Well, how are you so good with the keyboard? And I'm like, because I have a fucking iPod Touch and QWERTY ASDF keys are in the same position. There's nothing different about the keyboard. This is about fine manipulation. And I realized that there's a lot of people who kind of don't get to transfer that coordination to different places. No matter what keyboard I'm using, I can type just fine, whether it's a touchscreen, a tiny one, or the numerical ones from old ass vintage phones, that type of thing. Pay attention, it's there, you know how that works. But that numerical one, it actually went in alphabetical order. So if you know your alphabet and you're familiar with those keys, why would it be hard for you? But sometimes I thought of the tech person as I own tech for status purposes, not necessarily because I am the grandmaster at using my device. My stupid phone was $1,000 fucking. Do you not think I'm not going to know how to use it? I'm not going to get to know its features. I'm not going to try to use just more than the texting app and the social media apps. No, I'm going to take this mug and I'm going to pull it apart. And on Twitter, I remember seeing a post about the equalizer and if people have adjusted it. And I'm like, fuck yeah. I set it to rock. As soon as I get a new device, I set it to rock. I need my bass boosted. I need my treble boosted. I need the mid boosted, all those types of things. My car, that was one of the first things I did. I probably do that before I change a wallpaper on a computer. My laptop, same thing. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes people have things and you don't really care to explore it, and I don't know why your instinct is not to explore it, but maybe I'm an explorer for religious reasons. I look at the world as it's designed to be explored, but not necessarily in a nosy way. I know the limits. Sometimes the person who appeared to be very techie, they just weren't at all. But on the contrary, to finish my rambling turned into a vent, there is the tech person who genuinely was good with computers. This was the person who knew how to burn movies, burn CDs, and reformat things, use picture editors, make videos using Movie Maker 2.0 or whatever that was, create pretty neat, nice, cool presentations. And there were some people who were good with Microsoft Works, like the whole word processor and formatting it to looking all kinds of crazy, and then Publisher and your PowerPoint. And by the time that I left school, I started to hear about something called Prezi, and I remember giving it a shot and I hated it because what I learned was Publisher. And after that, I just don't care to learn new software. And what I saw Microsoft do to Paint now, it's an abomination. When you hit the print screen button, it doesn't just very simply screenshot it. Now it lets you do all kinds of highlighting and all that shit. And for me, I just never had a problem with physically trimming things. But now I feel like Microsoft is doing things that nobody asked for except maybe people over there in their offices. But yeah, I feel more comfortable using a computer from like the year 2012-ish, 2013, 2014. That was like my strongest computer savviness that I felt. And I think my favorite version of Microsoft software was 2007. I just vividly remember 2007 just kind of wowing me. Anyway, enough about the techie. You get the point. And then, of course, there was that one kid who was really into war topics, or they were in the, what was that program called? ROTC. And some people genuinely pursued a military career after that. This is supposed to be kind of like the AP courses for college. Well, ROTC is like the AP class for you to have a military career type of thing. I found it cool. I like the idea of learning about it. My brother was in it, and some of my classmates that I was friends with were into it. But I just felt like it wasn't the thing for me. I couldn't see myself just doing that all the time. And the days that they had to wear the uniform and you had to keep it all neat and clean and lined up and polished and shoes shining, and the way that the women had to have their hair just super flat and tight and in a bun and all that. I can't do that, especially for a whole day, and especially in a school setting. Just, I don't trust that. I don't believe in protocol like that. But yeah, I just remember the kids like that. It was like a unique society. I just remember thinking I can exist in that circle because I happen to know about it from like secondhand experience observing my brother, but it didn't bring me that joy and excitement that you would think, you know. The other kind of student that I remember is the one who was very political. And this very political kid was characterized by being the one kid who was good at social studies, and they also knew about politics both on a local and national level, and they always talked about pursuing the presidency. And we all knew who had the potential of being the next president. I mean, for real. Like, they just bought into the politics completely. I was never that person, but many times I heard the comment that I should be president, and I'm like, y'all just throw around the "you should be president" phrase so casually that I don't get it. Is this a game? Is this a joke? And then this was another kind of student that undoubtedly challenged me to be in the presence of, and this was the one who loved to argue a lot, and in some cases even physically fight. Fortunately, I was never in any real physical fights. I was only in one physical fight at my bus stop, and of course, because I ended up reporting it, then both me and that stupid girl ended up getting suspended out of school. And this was at the very end of the school year too. It made zero sense to me. I'm like, this bitch is the one who hit me. Am I supposed to just stay there and continue getting hit? Nah, I'm gonna clap back at this bitch. That's one of those things that I never understood about school. Suspensions. What is achieved during suspensions? But then I thought, well, since it's the end of the school year, then what gives? But I just remembered that I was excited about the school year ending and hanging out with friends in school and stuff. But then because of this, they had a little policy in effect of, I think it was beginning the last week of May up until whatever week of June school ended. If you did anything that would get you in the grounds of ISS or OSS, you're just gone for the rest of the year. They didn't want to deal with you. And then me, I was just peaceful about it because I said, well, I'm not problematic. I've never gotten written up for anything. So this is going to be a breeze for me. I'm not intimidated by that. But of course, a lot of the troublemakers were worried about it and whatnot. And I said, well, you should consider giving up your life as a troublemaker, right? But no, for some reason, someone had to ruin it for me. And then me, in an effort to do the right thing, which is, hey, this bitch here has behavioral problems that you ought to look into, and she is a menace to me and my safety. No, you decided to not do any of that, not do any kind of investigation. Just be like, oh, okay, y'all fought and it was at the bus stop. Well, the bus stop is technically an extension of school, so therefore we're not gonna deal with you. We're not gonna ask you anything. I was expecting for me to go through this process the way that Ma described her being a teacher and the way that she's used to handling that kind of matter. It's a complete protocol that you follow. And even this girl's mom, I gotta respect her because she did end up visiting us and she tried to find out what happened. And she said that she talked to her kid and had a chat, and I believe it because that girl's behavior was just completely different. But it just bothered me because originally we were supposed to be kind of friends, but she stopped being cool the moment that she started hanging out with the stupid dumbass crowd that is the crowd who tries to make you popular and look cool and change the way you dress and get you to do things that you're not really meant to do. These were religious people. But I don't mean to say that as well. People who are religious don't usually cause problems. They never have anything wrong with them, like nothing like that. I'm just saying that when you think of somebody as being religious, you already have a little bit of a profile that comes to your mind. She used to dress very conservatively, and then as soon as she started hanging out with that stupid crowd, she started to like rebel a little bit. She also began cursing. She used to not cuss, but I guess in the presence of her mom, she was, this nicely put together girl. But away from her mom, I always told myself, would your mom feel proud if I were to go up to her and tell her that this is how you really are away from home? That type of thing. Even though this was like a long ass time ago and this happened when I was in 6th grade in middle school, I told myself, well, if I'm being put away from school, maybe it's because I need to be away from school because I don't like crowds anyway. I was excited about my friends, but I was always excited about hanging out with friends in a more secluded, small kind of setting. When everybody's wilding up about school being over, it's really not fun. So in a sense, I didn't mind that I was missing out school activities, but I might have been missing out on some school things. The person who fights a lot and argues, especially talking back to a teacher, I had zero tolerance for that. I couldn't stand it. It always made me feel a special kind of cringe, a special kind of stress. And I always resented it because I said, these are authorities that deserve so much respect. And I always thought about my own mom. So this kind of student, it was just hard for me to exist with them. Another kind of student that I can recall is the kind of student who's always eating and the teacher is always calling them out on the fact that they're eating when they're not supposed to. And it was funny because the class could be quiet and then all of a sudden you heard the sound of a wrapper or something, and then the teacher would look up and be like, don't tell me that you're eating or you're eating candy or something. And then whoever got called out, they would be like, but I'm so hungry, and lunch is like half an hour away. And I understand because as a teen, I could never really predict when I was gonna feel hungry, when I wasn't. But at some point, I used to skip breakfast entirely and I seemed to be doing fine. But there just came a point in which I just couldn't 100% go without eating anything. But I remember that person because sometimes they would come to class eating something and then the teacher would be like, whatever it is that you have, you better finish it quickly and don't make a mess. And I just remember telling myself, there's no way I could do that. Just eat spontaneously during class. Another person I remember from school, this is particularly guys, but there were the guys who had shop classes. It could be like electricity related, it could be related to, I don't know, chopping wood in some form. I sincerely don't know. I never knew anybody directly who I was friends with in those classes. But there also was some kind of course. It was called networking and it had to do with Cisco. And basically this room was a mess. There was a bunch of wires everywhere. It was just the most tech-oriented class ever. And I ended up in that class by mistake, actually. I spent 2 days in it because I was trying to take a computer class, like a computer software class, computer applications kind of class. But I ended up in this class, which was more about the intricacies of tech, which is the wires, the servers, all that stuff. And I'm like, if this is how class is going to be forever, I better get out of here. So then I had to talk to my guidance counselor and ask how I ended up in that class. And they said, oh, well, the computer applications courses ran out of space, so we kind of had to throw you in this. And I said, this is a mistake. Is there like a science class or something available? I forget what I ended up taking in its place. If I look at my schedule, I will remember. I just remember that I had to get away from it, and I'm pretty sure I ended up taking some kind of science class instead. Maybe that's when I ended up taking another level of chemistry, which I wasn't very good at. I passed that class with a B. Barely a B, I'm gonna admit. There were the boys who were into cars, and they drove their own, and they could talk about it. They talked about their pickup trucks, because we're in the South, of course. Things like that. They sometimes dressed with the boots, sometimes the camel print, and just all kinds of crazy things. And I always thought, okay, this is like the clique of people where they are into that hardware type of thing, just laborious type of thing. And sometimes their own families had a background in that type of thing, so I can see how they really couldn't escape it. And then finally, the last type of student I can recall has to do with fashion, clothes. We all knew that one person who just put a lot of thought, a lot of effort into their clothes, their makeup, their outfit, their shoes, their nails, everything. They were just a fashion icon for some reason. And that person didn't necessarily bother me. They weren't necessarily behaviorally challenging or anything, but you could tell that school wasn't really their passion. Their passion was more, how can I get people talking about my fashion choices? That type of thing. Well, there you guys have it. Those are all the types of students that I can recall from my experience in school. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what your experiences were, and I'll see you soon.